Good morning. We're going to read the next story in the Grace book. So let's go over our vocabulary first. Lark or larks. If you have no S, it just means the one bird. A lark is a bird. If you put the S, it's supposed to be more than one. 2 larks, 3 larks, 100 larks. Well, let's count the sounds in lark. L, R, K, S, larks. Because of the S, you have an additional sound. If you want to practice writing it, this is where you pause the video and you practice writing it. Let's move to the next vocabulary word. Perfect chance. Perfect chance. I really don't have a picture for that. Perfect chance means the best time to do something. In the story, it'll be the perfect chance to go have a picnic. Perfect. Perfect. Chance. We've learned that CE says perfect chance. The best time to do something. In the story, it will be the best time to have a picnic. Wind picks up. That just means maybe the wind was soft or gentle, and then it starts blowing even harder. So in the story, the wind will pick up, and that means a storm is coming. Wind picks up. That means the wind is blowing harder. Smile fades. If you say somebody's smile fades, they were smiling and for some reason they're not smiling anymore. And that means that something upset them, something worried them. Smile fades. All these words, even though they're not spelling words, you've been taught how to decode them. You've been taught how to read them. So you can stop after every vocabulary word and practice writing it and try counting the sounds. Now we're on storm shelter or basement. In the last video, we did discuss storm shelter. So let's look at the pictures of the storm shelters. And this is a basement. Lots of houses in other parts of the country, not in New Orleans, there's something under the house. It's a space under the house for storage or a space to go in case of a tornado. This one isn't under somebody's house. It's in their backyard. They can leave the house and go in and shut the door. And even if the tornado blows all the stuff on top of the ground, they'll be safe under the ground. So sometimes it's a storm shelter. Sometimes it's a basement. Let's look at those sounds. Storm, storm, shelter, shelter, storm shelter, basement. You can read that too because you can read base. That's an A consonant E. We learned that in the beginning of the year. Basement. Meant. So not every basement is made to be a storm shelter. Now, the door on the storm shelter, sometimes in the story they call it shutters. You could say the door on the storm shelter or the shutters, and there's a latch to keep it closed while that wind is blowing. But shutters can also be on a normal window on a house. And places here in New Orleans have shutters on their windows. Not only for storms or rain, but because it's very hot in New Orleans and sometimes people block out the sunlight. 2 more words. Glance. Glance is another way to look. Sometimes it means you looked at something quickly. Gl, and s. Don't forget that CE says s. Glance. And dart. A dart is a thing you can throw, but it can also mean moving quickly. To dart to something or dart away from something means to move quickly. Dart. This would be another good place to stop and practice reading and writing these words. Now let's look at the questions that will be asked. What did Mr. Spencer see as they finished up lunch? So let's listen to see what Mr. Spencer sees What do the Spencers do when the clouds get darker and the wind picks up? Oh, and when I cut and pasted, I forgot my question mark. Ooh, no, I didn't. Because here's wind's picked up. Okay? Here's the next question. What is a storm shelter? You've seen that one twice, in the last story and this story. What did Grace shout as Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters? Okay, now we need to get in the story and read it and try to answer those questions. Okay, so let's get in our Grace book and scroll all the way down to dark clouds. Okay, almost there. Hold on, kids. Dark clouds and wind. Dark clouds and wind. After the first paragraph, you should pause and try to read it without me. And if you have trouble, you rewind. The next morning, when the Spencers wake up, the sun is out. Larks sing in the treetops. Socks and pants hang on the line. It seems like the perfect chance to have a picnic. Well, there's a bunch of our vocabulary. Perfect chance. It's a good time to have a picnic. Larks are birds singing in the treetop. Now you should pause the video and try to read that without me. Then start the video again. Let's try to read this paragraph. The Spencers sit down next to the house and munch on their lunch. As they finish up, Mr. Spencer glances up and sees dark clouds off to the west. The smile on his face fades. Okay, well, why is the smile on his face fading? What does he see? Could the dark clouds be worrying him? Here's another good point to pause and try to read by yourself. What's the matter? Jill asks. You try to read that without me. Now let's look at that picture. Picnic table, clothes drying on the line. Everybody's happy. Now let's read all of this and then you try to read it without me. It looks like there's a storm off to the west, says Mr. Spencer. The clouds get darker and the wind picks up. I don't like the look of it, Mr. Spencer says to his wife. Let's pack up and take the children down to the storm shelter just to be safe. This is a good place to pause and practice reading it out loud without me. The Spencers pick up their picnic things. They stuff the food in the picnic basket. Grace grabs the cups and napkins. They take the basket down into the storm shelter. Let's look at that next picture. Here's Mr. Spencer. Grace is carrying the basket. There's the little sister Jill. And you see how it's under the house? And those doors right there, you could call them doors or shutters. The storm shelter is like a basement. It is a safe place where the Spencers can take shelter in a storm. Practice that part without me. Once they are down in the shelter, Mr. Spencer starts to lock up the shutters. No, Grace shouts. Not yet. Pepper's still out there. Uh-oh. That's kind of scary. They love their dog. They got to go get their dog. Mr. Spencer darts out of the shelter to get the dog. So did he move out of the shelter quickly or slowly? Soon he is back. He is dripping wet, but he has Pepper in his arms. Now's a good point to stop and try to read this portion without me. Let's look at that picture. There we go. Everybody's safe in the shelter. So let's try to go answer those questions. What did Mr. Spencer see as they finished up lunch? Well, you have to remember to turn the question around. Mr. Spencer sees. What did he see when they finished up lunch? That's where you have to go back to the story and look. Mr. Spencer sees a storm off to the west, or Mr. Spencer sees the clouds get darker. You could put either one. Either one would be acceptable. Next question. So Mr. Spencer sees dark clouds, or Mr. Spencer sees a storm coming. Write it or type it, because everybody will get their own copy in Google Classroom. What do the Spencers do when the clouds get darker and the wind picks up? Now, if you don't want to write all of that, what's a good pronoun for Spencers? They. You could put they right there. They go in the storm shelter. And there's the word storm shelter. They pick everything up and go in the storm shelter. What is a storm shelter? Well, you have that on your vocabulary, and it's also in the story. So let's try to find it in the story. The storm shelter is like a basement. It is a safe place where the Spencers can take shelter in a storm. You don't have to use every one of those words. You can put it in your own words. You can say, the storm shelter is a safe place to take shelter in a storm. The storm shelter is a safe place to take shelter in a storm. Okay? And there's one more question, I believe. What did Grace shout as Mr. Spencer started to lock up the shutters? Oh, I think you remember that. So you can say Grace shouts. Let me get you started on the typing. You've got to learn how to turn these questions around. Grace shouts. And then you have to tell me what she shouted. Well, let's go back and find it. Grace shouts, Pepper's still out there. Or Grace shouts, no, Pepper's still out there. She wants him to go get the dog. She loves her pet dog. Okay? So then you have to finish typing that. Everybody will get a copy of this. You have to try to answer the questions and finish the typing, or you have to write it on a piece of paper. Okay? See you on the next video. Bye, kids.